welcome to the Momversation Club. I'm Claire Strong.
And I'm Christina Struckmeyer. We're two moms just like you, navigating the nitty-grittiness of motherhood and taking you along with us as we talk about the things that nobody's talking about.
And we're so excited because today we're joined by autism advocate Susanna Peace Lovell, who's the author of Your True Self is Enough. And we're going to chat with her about her journey through special needs parenting and insights for those in the thick of it. Hi, Susanna.
Hello, you two. So good to see you.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, we're so excited to have you. And this, I'm really excited for this episode because you're just going to be a fantastic guest, but we're also going to be chatting about really important things as it relates to any mama out there who has, a child with special needs, albeit, autism, which Christina, you can relate to. So yes, this is going to be exciting. Thank you, Susanna.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy to be here with you both. And I love that we are all sort of, girl moms here. So I think between the three of us, we have 5 girls ranging from 2 to 18. So,
yeah, wow. A lot of diversity here.
Ladies, well, what is the hardest? I mean, Christina, you can't speak to this right now, but Susanna, was it 2 or was it 18? Which is the hardest?
You know what? I have to say it's different hard and different amazing all at once. Both and all the time. I would say even now, sometimes things shift even within the day, even by the hour. Sometimes it's just, we as moms, we have to be prepared for the unexpected. And, as we have to learn how to shift on a dime sometimes and be so flexible and a mom at the same time. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Well, Susanna, we're so excited because we've been watching you on social and we've been meaning to have this conversation for some time. We've been trying to make sure we get all of our dots in a row. And as mamas that are busy, that's been a little difficult. But we're so happy you're here because not only did we enjoy your book so much, we love everything that you share on social and the different outreach that you've done. So for those who are not familiar with you, share a little bit about yourself and tell us what you do and kind of your spiel.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I am, a native Californian. Let's start there. I was born in Los Angeles. I still am in Los Angeles. I, sort of veered around the state for growing up and going to college up north and coming back down to LA. And I come from a really big family. And so I just like to start off the conversation with, motherhood for me was such a strong desire my entire existence. So I have always dreamed of becoming a mom. I wanted tons of kids. I wanted at least 4, if not 5. And I had this whole vision for my life. So anyway, flash forward to today. I am a mother, a single mother actually, to an 18-year-old daughter who is my biggest teacher on this earth. And she also happens to be a girl with myriad challenges, disabilities, unique needs, diagnoses. And so I now, in my life and my work, which I feel is all meshed together in one, am an advocate for disability families. I'm a coach. I'm a life coach. I practice energy work too. I just am all about how can we create the most thriving life possible for all of us moms, especially moms who are raising children who might have extra needs or, unique needs. Again, it's so hard, even if there isn't a diagnosis, sometimes there's something that's really, really challenging in terms of us having to advocate for our children. So I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a consultant. This is absolutely 100% inspired by my everyday lived experience raising my daughter, whose name is Arizona. And again, she's 18 and she just became a legal adult, which she likes to remind me of. So yeah, now we're transitioning to adult things like adult services and things like that. So I feel like I became the advocate and the coach that I felt I needed so much back then when Arizona was first diagnosed at the age of 2.5. And we've come a long way in terms of resources and support and offerings and conversations, right? When I was, that young mom and trying to figure things out, I could not find a community. I could not find other moms. Ultimately, we create what we most need, right? So here I am. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Susanna, take us back to Arizona's diagnosis. So she was this 2.5-year-old. What prompted you initially to seek out a diagnosis, Susanna? Could you share that with us?
Yes, I will. And I will also say that I only sought out a diagnosis because, it's not that I was so in tune with my daughter and her development. I really didn't have a clue, to be honest.
Yeah,
I was just like,
we
she
don't as
seems a
new
little
moms.
bit stubborn and in her own world and saying interesting things and doing interesting things. And whatever, I'm a first time mom. And even though I've been around a lot of kids my entire life, whatever, she's just kind of quirky,
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until one of my siblings, one of my sisters, called me and was like, Susanna, I just want to have this conversation with you. I just think, there's something different about Arizona. And she was around 2 years old at this point. And I was like, well, what do you mean?
Mm.
Defensively and kind of like, but also, that mommy gut feeling, that
Yes.
intuition that you're just like,
Yeah.
so, she's right. I need to listen. And I just knew immediately that what she was saying, even though it wasn't like this conclusion of what's going on with my daughter, the fact that she was like, there's something different about her and I'm not really sure what. And I said, I don't even know what to do. I have no idea what you're saying, really. I mean, I was so lost. And she said, I don't know, Susanna, but maybe start with your pediatrician. And she was already a mom at this point. So she had young ones of her own. She's an educator. She's around kiddos. So I just felt like, okay, let me listen to my sister.
Yeah.
So then and so that's sort of what started the journey. I was sort of deer in the headlights, and I started with my pediatrician, and it was a long road from that first phone call, because he was very much trying to convince me that everything was just fine, normally, like Arizona was typically developing. And because she had hit certain milestones, right? It's like there's this checklist when it comes to autism spectrum. Actually, there wasn't even one back then, but now I know there is. And so my doctor was like, you're a first time mom, you're overthinking. I know you're anxious. Everything's fine. Just give it some time. And I was like, I don't want to give it time. You know what I mean? Because now this gut feeling has been activated within me, and I need to do something about it. Right. So it started from there. And, I just kept being a squeaky wheel, very nicely and diplomatically, to try to get answers.
I think that pretty much any special needs mom can relate to that story.
Yeah.
I can hear so much of my own story with my oldest daughter in that. You just, as a first time mom, especially if it's your first child, when people go, well, how did you know? Well, I didn't know, actually. That's my story as well, is that with your first child, normal is whatever normal has become in your home. And, your child, that is her normal. And, all of these children are so different in their own way and so special. And so it's like, yeah, that's the little quirks that she does. And I have become accustomed to it. And I don't even question it because it's just part of who she is. And that's my daughter.
Yes.
It's not till really an outsider says something. And thank goodness for those outsiders who do speak up, because unfortunately, we aren't the first to be like, yes, tell me much more information about whether there might be something wrong or something different. We don't want to hear those words as parents. We want to hear healthy, normal, adjusted, no extra needs, please. And so I remember that feeling the same way, of very much wanting to buck like a label on my kid and not wanting to proceed. But also, like you said, once you know something and it's in there, you can't unknow it. And so then you start looking at everything and being like, that is a little different now that you've said something. So I love hearing that. And also, I think it's really encouraging for maybe those who are listening who might have a child or someone in their life has a child that is just a little unique, a little different. And maybe there might be something to look at there, even if your pediatrician has told you everything's just fine.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
you mentioned, Susanna, that gut instinct. I think mums have a really good feeling when something is just a little off, because my story is, so my eldest daughter has ADHD. And I remember, again, around the same age, she was just a little quirky. She was very sociable, but she'd do quirky things. Like, I remember her stacking up like colored cups, and they had to be in an exact order, and she'd do that with all of her toys. It was very ordered. And she'd spend hours doing it, and little things like that. She'd have a real hard job leaving parties. For example, we'd go to birthday parties, and there'd be a major upset leaving, more so than the other kids. And so I knew there was something, but because, as you mentioned, Susanna, the typical milestones we've had, she was checking them all. Her speech was where it needed to be. Her motor skills were where they needed to be. But I knew something, and it wasn't until we actually moved from England here to San Diego that I was really able to kind of push a diagnosis. And Christina, you mentioned about not wanting to label your daughter, and I kind of felt like that too. But honestly, the best thing that my daughter and I ever did was get her diagnosed with ADHD, because now she's at high school. She has an IEP with all this support around her. And because she's old enough to make sense of things, she doesn't feel like she's this idiot anymore. She says, "Oh, Mom, it's my ADHD. I can see this now." And so for me, the diagnosis has been a godsend. And so, I would encourage, from my own personal experience, if you're a mum listening to this and you just know there's something a little different, a little off, don't be scared of the diagnosis, because in my experience, at least, it's been really helpful to both of us, my daughter and I, that is. Do you ladies feel similarly about your daughter's diagnosis now with hindsight?
100% for sure.
Yeah.
For certain, in terms of exactly what you said, resources and support and opening the doors, and also giving us some context and talking points for others in our lives, or people that we come across, in terms of them having an understanding, and creating dialogue around awareness and behaviors, and so on and so forth. It was really hard for me, I will admit, hearing the word autism when Arizona was 2.5. I think our amazing developmental pediatrician that we ultimately ended up with was, gingerly broaching the subject of autistic like behaviors. Oh, well, this is all really sensory processing dysfunction. It really is about executive functioning and apraxia. And I was like, okay, well, those words don't sound as scary to me at the time as autism. But ultimately, the end result was the official ASD diagnosis at the age of 2 years and 7 months for Arizona. And and that started the next chapter of my life.
Susanna, I read your book. I started it in the beginning, like A Mom Life. Okay, anybody who's ever tried to read a book ever. I started it trying to read it when, like, in between little like cracks and nooks of toddler life. But then I got the opportunity when I was on a trip to read it on the airplane, and I sobbed on the airplane, like reading your book, because it was just, I felt so seen as a parent. And the way that you wrote, it felt like I was literally looking at like a diary of someone. And the way you just described the diagnosis process, you use that same openness through every stage that you go through. And the chapters about her in elementary school, especially for me, because my daughter's 9, and we've recently entered mainstream education alongside some special needs services. And I felt so connected to your worry of wanting her to just not have these things, these barriers. You want to, as a parent, you hate to use the word, because in the special needs community, we don't use the word normal, right? It's a bad word, taboo. But there's a sense where it's like, I just wish that this was a normal situation, and that these things weren't so hard, and that I was able to enjoy these parts. And you're constantly seeking out the joy in it. But also, and what I felt from your book was, you can feel a sense of mourning certain things.
Yes.
And that's real. And I feel like nobody wants to talk about that. Like, nobody in the special needs community wants to focus on the parenting aspect of letting go of those expectations and allowing your child to just be your child.
Well, I mean, I think this goes back to my both and comment earlier in terms of, we used to call it, and we still do sometimes, we learn this in Arizona's amazing therapeutic preschool, the double dip feelings, feeling grateful and being so sad. You know what I mean? Excited for the future and so terrified and worried. So I feel like this journey has taught me to be able to hold all of these big emotions and feelings all together all at once. And what I'm modeling when I'm doing that is allowing my daughter to be able to feel, well, it's okay for me to be anxious and looking forward to something at the same time. There's space for all of that, I think, for all of us here on this planet, really. So I just, I thank you so much for that, Christina, because again, it's like I wrote this book, and it's funny that you mentioned diary, because I am a big journaler. I have kept a diary or a journal ever since I was 13 years old, and I have every single one of them still saved. Like physically.
Special.
Yeah. And so when I was writing this book, I was literally going back to the date of when that specific thing happened, because to me, my diary, my journal, my diary, when I was 13, I had a Hello
Dear diary.
Yeah, he is cute and he is cute. And he's so cute. But to me, it has always been this very amazing cathartic release. And I, have days I write in it all the time. I have my journal with me right here. This is my 68th journal in the last 27 years. 37 years. Oh my gosh. Wow. 37 years.
Yeah.
Right?
That's amazing.
Okay. I'm not very good at math, but anyway, yeah. So so to me, it just was, I've never meant to write for an audience. And I feel like I'm so grateful that you felt that I was being vulnerable, because this version that you're reading now is a much more reserved, conservative version than what I had originally written, because at first I wanted to just throw in the kitchen sink, like all of the details. But then I had to start thinking about my daughter, Arizona, as she's growing older and how she's going to respond. And, we had to have some compromises as we, discussed the imminent publishing of this particular book, and had to take into consideration the other people in my life and her life growing up. Like, for example, her father, my parents, the service providers, some of the names and schools I changed because that felt the most supportive. And, Arizona, although she's so happy with me talking about her as Arizona, didn't want her name in the book. And that's why she's just called A in the book. Right. So, it's definitely been a process, and I'm so grateful that it's out there. Finally.
Yeah, well, it's a delicate dance. We even do it here at the Momversation Club of what do you share from your mom perspective, and what's going too far where you're dipping into your child's privacy and their own personhood. And
and especially, Christina, as our kids get older, because, like you, Susanna, I have teen girls. So, stuff that maybe I would have felt comfortable talking about in this space when my girls were much younger, I can't do now, because they have access to it. They're on social media. They can see, if they wanted to watch the podcast, they can see what we post on Instagram. And so I feel that dance is even more exaggerated as my girls have got older. And as Christina mentioned, the book is so raw, it's so vulnerable, and it absolutely makes mums who are in a similar space to us feel seen. But I wanted to know, what does Arizona think of the book, Susanna? Has she given you feedback on it? And if so, what has that been?
Yes. Okay. So, if anyone knows my daughter, they know that she will tell it like it is at any given time, very loudly, sometimes in public. Um, she, has never had a filter. She is very authentically herself, which is such a beautiful and amazing process to witness.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable sometimes. So we had to, again, talking about this compromise. So the original title of my book was A is for Arizona. Okay. Because I had this epiphany when I was on the acupuncture table when she was like 5 or 6, and I was so depressed and so anxious, and I was trying to get treatment, and I was sobbing on the table because I just couldn't handle my life. And, I had this epiphany around all of the therapies and treatments and goals and all kinds of things that we were putting together with all of our therapists, as probably like so many therapies, occupational therapy,
Yeah.
speech therapy, all of that. And so I was realizing that they were treating her, based on her symptoms of, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, anxiety, et cetera. Right. And I was like, wow, it's so interesting that all her diagnoses, even in the beginning, she has still severe food allergies, right? So all of these diagnoses, allergies, asthma, everything, happen to start with the letter A. And I was like, but actually, oh my gosh, well, A is not for autism and ADHD and anxiety. A is for Arizona, this beautiful, perfectly whole, complete being that was brought into this world through me, right? And so anyway, when Arizona was around 13, 14, she's like, yeah, by the way, I really don't like that title because I don't want you to use my name. And I was like, you are out of this world. It's the best title for the book. It's like epic. Like, what are you talking about? And I was holding so tightly to this, my own idea. And she's like, yeah, mommy, I just don't want everyone to know about my life. I had, I have, a chapter around the year of poop. She had a really hard time potty training, So I took all of these things based on our compromise at the time. And she said she was finally okay, with the book being published if she could write the foreword. And so she wrote the foreword, and in the foreword, it was kind of like, well, what would you like people to know before they start reading this memoir from your mother's perspective, with you as this big character in it. And she said, a number of things in the foreword. And one of the things she said was, I just want people to know, Mama, your true self is enough. And so I was like, all right, ding, ding.
Yeah, that's the name of the book.
I love that title too, Susanna. I really do. And that really hits hard because as mums, especially as mums of special needs kids, we often, or certainly I do, I often question whether I'm doing enough. Have I done this right? What else can I do? Am I on the ball? And I'm always questioning whether I'm enough. And that title, I think, works both ways. It works as it relates to the child, and it also works as it relates to the mum. So I think it's a beautiful title and it's perfectly fitting.
Yeah.
Have you got feedback on this book? And if so, what type of feedback have you got? Because surely it's not just Christina and I for whom this book really struck a chord.
Yeah, I think, and Christina, you mentioned this earlier too. Like a lot of feedback that I get is the tears, because of the feeling seen, and because of this journey of a mom feeling so worried and anxious and hopeless and concerned, and just all over the place. Like I don't even know where to start. And so when moms tell me, I just feel so less alone. I feel like I am not alone on this journey, and it's still hard, and it's still challenging, and it's still scary, and there still are so many unknowns, but I feel like I really am not alone. And to me, that has been the most beautiful feedback, because that was my intention for it. And, at any stage of the game, in terms of whether your kid was just diagnosed, or maybe you were just coming to terms with, your child's diagnosis and they're already in their teens, I mean, we are, on so many different areas of our, journeys, that I just feel like, whenever we have the opportunity to sort of have an awakening moment in our lives, it's such a beautiful opportunity.
Well, that's why, Claire and I started the Momversation Club, as we felt there was so many things that were unsaid in motherhood and so many topics that people were smoothing over. We wanted a place for people to feel seen and not alone, and like they're not crazy. These things are happening to us. These are experiences that we're having. And I love that you've done that for this community. And one thing I love about your book is alongside such raw, open, and vulnerability and just truth, because you go through some hard stuff. There's the potty training of it all, right? Like the things that we encounter as mothers, like fun stuff.
Sure.
But there's also things like, divorce and navigating like other people's responses to this special person in your life. And what I loved about the book is there's these sections after every chapter that are like these truth sections. I'm spacing on the name of it. I'm sure.
Truth corners.
Truth corner. Thank you. And they offer not only like, you're like, okay, here's my diary, but also like, here's like, I'm going to pick out what I've learned from this section. Share a little bit about why you decided to do that.
Yeah. So again, the first version of the 78,000 versions of this book was the kitchen sink. I was just dumping everything into it, and that was probably 300 something pages. Crazy, right? And then, over time I had to pull things out, only because I was like, well, I was speaking out of emotion here. Let me just sort of remove that. And ultimately I was like, I know my audience. I know my crazy mama, lifestyle and busyness. And it's so hard to read, spend time, take the time to actually take care of ourselves often. But,
right.
And so my book is now just a little over 100 pages, 110 pages or so. And I wanted to still, honor my idea and intention of creating this memoir to share with the world, but it became like more like anecdotal. So we, it's linear. It's a linear story of before motherhood all the way up until my daughter is about to go into public school for the first time. And, there were so many things that I, know now, me individually, that I wish I had known then, or I wish someone would have sort of taken me by the shoulders and said, wait, hold on, Susanna, this is really important for you to ingest right now. And, all of these tips I wanted to share with others, and they might not, people might not be able to relate to every single one, but I just wanted to share, little, nuggets or chunks or digestible chunks where people could feel like, oh my gosh, you know what, thank you for that reminder. Maybe I don't have the capacity to, dive into that right now, but I'm going to think about that. And maybe that would be helpful for me. And so I just thought that was a nice little way to also just, as I'm telling my story, just be also like, okay, but let me just really like give it to you pretty real right now. I was devastated. So even as I'm doing all of these things and being this warrior mom and, accomplishing whatever you want to, fill in the blank, I am still, so sad and so triggered and so hurt. And I'm, just trying to survive most days. And I want you to know that that's okay too, in whatever moment.
That's a great reminder, and that's an element of the book that I know so many moms will really appreciate, Susanna. Something that all three of us can relate to, in addition to our children, we've all been single parents. And
we should share that as well, Susanna. We're both divorced, remarried.
Wait, are we just,
so
are we just a little threesome club? I love this.
Oh,
Three
yeah, no,
Musketeers.
seriously. But the reason I bring this up, and it's not to say we need an award because we're going through stuff without a partner, but I do want to speak to that because being a mum is extremely difficult, even if you have the best partner, most supportive partner in the world beside you. But if you remove that and you are going at this on your own and with extras, because as we all know, special needs kids, there's a lot more involved as far as everything we've touched upon during this conversation. And so, I just want to acknowledge how difficult this is, not only as a mum, but then as a single parent. I mean, where did you get your strength from? Because I've had days before I remarried. I was a single parent for several years, with absolutely no involvement from my ex-husband financially or practically or anything. And I really did, question, how I could carry on. And I was just depressed and exhausted. And so, from a mum to another mum, Susanna, how did you get through all of this, coupled with the fact that you are a single parent?
This is such a great question. And I feel like we're verging on another sort of spectrum of single parenting, right? Because there are so many different ways that we single parent. And I would just like to state that as a single parent, I am not a sole single parent. So, meaning my daughter has a father who is in her life. He's a fantastic man and so generous and giving. And they have such a beautiful and special relationship. And I raise her physically 98% of the time. So she lives with me full time. And she's with her dad, every other Saturday night or however it works out, but in terms of the day to day, that is for sure all me. And so I just wanted to, clarify that aspect. But I will say that, I'm still trying to figure it out. Okay. So every stage of the game is different. And I just remember having this, aha moment as I realized that, we were separating, it was not going to work out, and we were going to ultimately get divorced and, live separate lives. Arizona was about 7 or 8. So this is about 10 years ago. I have not remarried. But I will say that I just remember falling to my knees at one point where I just felt like I can't move 1 millimeter forward. And I just was crying, and crying to my God, my universe. And I was just saying, I just want to be happy. And I know that it's possible for me to access joy. And so I need guidance. I need help. It is my intention to call this into my life because I don't agree that I am not here, to be miserable and to be living a life of suffering and trying to survive every moment. I know life is going to be challenging. There are going to be seasons. And I know that this universe, is benevolent. So how then can this, be my experience? I don't know, but show me the way, guide me. And so I think when we have that intention, when we start saying things out loud, we start writing things out down, what we seek is seeking us at the very same time. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe this. This is why I'm still sitting here in this moment, in this chair, in this form, as a human being. And with my sprained knee, right?
I'm here.
I'm here. I'm alive in this moment. I choose joy. I choose to live. I choose to be connected with my daughter. I choose to honor her for exactly who she is. I choose to honor myself for exactly who I am. And I will just continue to seek out all the things that feel authentic to me in this lifetime. And I just have to know that everything is going to be okay.
I love that. Yeah, I'm getting more and more into that, actually, manifesting and saying things out loud. And I do think if you put it out there in the universe, it will come back to you. But how important, because you are very spiritual, you really do practice mindfulness. How has that helped you, Susanna, along this journey?
Well, I mean, I think it's saved my life many
Wow.
times in many different iterations. I feel like I have been able to build this toolboxes of resources and support for myself. And I'm able again to model for my daughter, breathing techniques or, mommy needs a minute. I'm going to write some things in my journal. I'm going to come back and let's talk about what's hard for me right now. And we have these, dialogues that, well, sometimes we also have these screaming, fits back and forth. Okay. So let's be real here. It's not always like, okay, let's take a breath. But it's just amazing for me to be able to build up this, toolbox over time, and to be able to share it with, my clients, my friends, anyone who's around me, obviously my daughter too. And so, yeah, it's so supportive because sometimes as you know, moms, like any given moment, your world can be turned upside down, right? You get a call from school. There's, some very troubling thing that your daughters are going through right now in that moment, and they need you right now. So, yeah, oh man, it's a practice. And we get to practice every single day in every moment. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. I want to get back to just before we wrap, because we could talk all night. I mean, I love this conversation so much.
I know.
It's so good.
I got my pen and paper ready for tips from you, Susanna. I'm like, okay, throw those our way.
Yes.
Please.
But we touched on just now, where do you get the strength? And I feel like as special needs moms, I don't know about you, Susanna, but I get that all the time. Like, oh my gosh, you're so strong. Oh my gosh, you're so brave. And the reality is like, what other choice is there? Like, we have to be strong. And I feel like when you shared about your feelings around the divorce and how you can be so broken and shattered. I mean, during my divorce, not so much during the proceeding, but during the recognition of, oh gosh, this is going to have to happen. Like, oh gosh, this is going to be a whole thing that I have to go through now, which I think I grieved during the marriage. I felt like my whole insides were thrown against the wall, but yet I still had to carry on and continue going to ABA therapy and speech and classes and all this stuff. I think as moms, I think what I love about your book is it just shares that it's okay to not be okay and to still keep moving forward, even if you don't know what the final step's going to be. Because, especially as a special needs mom, there's never a no. You don't know what the other end is going to look like, especially now with your daughter being 18. That's one of my biggest thoughts as I'm raising my daughter is, what will life look like when she's older? And you don't have to know to just keep carrying on. It's like one step at a time, one breathing exercise at a time. But we all feel seen that we don't have to have it figured out. We'll come back later and we'll add truth sections for other people.
Absolutely. So supportive.
Love it, Susanna. Okay, so people obviously have to pick up this book. So tell people where they can find more of you and where they can get access to this.
Yeah. So, well, I have a website that is my first, middle, and last name.com, SusannaPeaceLovell.com. And, my book, Your True Self is Enough, Lessons Learned on My Journey Parenting a Child with Autism, is on Amazon.com. There's a link in my website that goes to Amazon. You can also purchase it off of Goodreads.com. And I'm really here for my community, and I'm so available. I have a contact form on my website, and I get back to every single person who writes in to me, just, needing a little boost or has a question or just needs to vent or whatever it is. I'm so here for everyone.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Momversation Club.
And if you've enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a review.
We really hope today's episode has helped you to feel more seen and less alone in motherhood. Until next time, bye for now.